Hello everyone. Sorry. My name is Abby, and I'm the young adult assistant at the Twin Lakes Library System, and I use she/her pronouns. So today, as a part of our summer reading club program book series recommendation videos, I'm going to be talking about books that follow the hero's journey. So if you don't know what the hero's journey is, it's kind of a narrative structure that some books and films and television shows all follow. The internet describes it as being the broad description for a hero's journey involves a hero who goes on an adventure and in a decisive crisis or like a fight or a climax moment, wins a victory and then comes home changed or transformed. So this is actually a fairly common sort of narrative structure. If you think you haven't seen it or heard it before, even that definition doesn't seem like you understand it fully. Some common films that actually use the hero's journey as sort of a part of their narrative structure is Star Wars, which I think a lot of us know what that is, The Lord of the Rings, and Spider-Man. So those are just some common films that use it. So today I'm going to be talking about some books that also use the hero's journey as a part of their narrative structure. So the first book I'm going to be recommending to you is Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. So this is on Hoopla in audiobook and ebook format, and it is recommended for ages 13 and older, which I think is a fair age range recommendation. So this book is actually a graphic novel. Dabney did like a video a while ago about graphic novels, but if you don't know what a graphic novel is, it's essentially like a book that's told through through the use of pictures and dialogue. So it's predominantly pictures, but it does have dialogue and writing included. So this graphic novel follows a shapeshifter named Nimona, and Nimona dreams of being the sidekick of a supervillain, and Nimona wants to recommend havoc and kind of just, be a supervillain sidekick and kind of mess with the world and be mischievous. So Nimona ends up meeting a supervillain named, I'm hopefully going to pronounce this correctly, Lord Ballister Blackheart. So Blackheart is on his own mission to prove that the heroes of the world that they live, which is his former kind of partner, Golden Loin, and the institution of law enforcement and heroic are not actually as heroic as they present themselves to be. He wants to prove that they're kind of evil in their own way and they do a lot of things that are harmful. So that's his goal, and he's trying to prove that and go about doing it, and Nimona kind of joins him on the way. So they kind of go through their plan to sort of prove that this institution is not what it claims to be. But as they're going along, they kind of start to find more about Nimona's abilities and realize there's a lot more to them than they previously believed was there, and it might be harder and more difficult for them to control these abilities. And so yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that right now, because I don't want to spoil anything. So why I liked it. So like I said, it's a graphic novel, and I love graphic novels. I think graphic novels are a good format if you maybe are struggling with getting into reading, or you want to take a break just from big long novels. A graphic novel, you still get to participate in reading a book, but it's a lot faster, I think, and it's cool because you get to see a visual representation of everything that's happening. And it's just kind of like breaks up the formatting of a traditional novel and going into a graphic novel instead. Also, because it's a graphic novel, the art is really important. So sometimes I feel like graphic novels, if you don't really like the art style, even if the plot's really strong, you're going to struggle with enjoying it. But luckily, this art style is really cool. It's all in color, which I like. Some graphic novels are not in color, but this one is. And it remains that way even on the online format. I read this in ebook format. I don't know exactly how they go about doing the audiobook, but from reviews I've seen, it's very good. So if that's also something you decide you want to do, you are not really missing out on anything with that either. So just so you know. Like I said, it's a super fast read. It's, I believe, 255 pages. And it took me maybe an hour and a half to read. So it's a very fast read, and not just because like it's pictures, but because it's very compelling. The plot is really interesting. The characters are all really interesting. So yeah, like I said, very compelling plot. It's a really fun fantasy story. There's kind of a mix of magic and science together. They kind of play off of each other in the world. So that's cool to see how Noelle Stevenson sort of did that and, made it work. Yeah. Next thing, the characters. So the main characters that you're following are incredibly likable, and I really like that all of them are not really two-dimensional main characters. They're all kind of in the gray morality area. So this world that they're in, they kind of talk about like who's a hero and who's not a hero, but really it kind of shifts what a hero is and like how we would define a hero and who actually fits in. None of them like truly fit that description, but it's interesting to see how they grow and develop with each other. And then the last thing is it's really funny. It's a funny graphic novel. Nimona is a funny character. I really like Nimona. Lord Ballister is also, some of his interactions with Nimona are really funny and kind of deadpan, so I definitely think that they have a cool dynamic. So before I go on to the second book, I wanted to briefly tell you what our code is, our SRC code. And that's going to be onward, so I have it on my phone, if it'll load. Let's see. For spelling. Okay. Hold on. I'm going to get a better representation of it really fast. But, this is going to be the code that you use onwards. Cool. For your SRC thing for Beanstalk to put in. So yeah. So the next book that I'm going to talk about this is a part of a series, but it's called A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and it's on RBDigital in ebook format. Common Sense Media recommends it for ages 15 and older, but personally I would probably recommend it for even a little older, like 16 or 17, just because some of the content in the series is a little more adult, I think. It sort of borders on new adult, in my opinion, but it is still meant for a YA audience, so just know that going into it. So this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and so it follows a girl named Feyre, and she lives with her family, and they don't really take care of themselves, so Feyre has to take care of everyone, and so she hunts for them, especially during the winter when it's really cold and they're trying to survive and they can't. So Feyre goes about and she's hunting and she's trying to take care of them, and they're poor and they're not doing well and they're really worried about surviving. So one day she is out hunting and she finds a deer, and she ends up killing the deer, but she also ends up killing a wolf who turns out to be a fairy, like a fae. And so that doesn't go over super well. And she is taken to the magical kingdom where fae lived and is kind of kept captive or under wraps with this fae named Tamlin, who is like has a mask that's stuck to his face over his like kind of like a masquerade mask. And he's very mysterious and they don't really like each other at first. But as the story goes on, they sort of go from having a really tense relationship, into something kind of more friendship and even romantic. But, that's part of the plot line. But then there's another plot line that's going on that is, Feyre is trying to understand this ancient and really horrible curse that Tamlin is under, and trying to figure out how to break it while also dealing with the dangers of fairyland, because it's super dangerous there. And then a bunch of other stuff happens that you will have to read the book to find out about. But why I liked it. So this is one of my favorite series of all time. This is a series. There are 3 books in it, but I do believe that There's a novella as well that sort of more predominantly follows one of Feyre's family members, and then I believe that Sarah J. Maas wants to write more in this world, but I would have to check just to be sure. But it is one of my favorite series of all time. I am obsessed with it. Doing all the research for this made me want to reread it, so I think it's wonderful. So like I said, it's a series, and I think that the series gets really a lot better with each book. The first book is good. The second book is the best book in the series, and that's like a universally agreed fact in the book world and the book reviewing community. Everyone, even if you didn't like the first book or the third book in this series, you pretty much liked the second book. So the second book is amazing. So read this only to get to the second book, if nothing else. If you don't love the first book, the second book blows it out of the water. The third book is incredible in my opinion as well, but the second book is like universally everybody enjoys that book who's read it. So yeah, just know that going into it. The next reason, Feyre. Feyre is an awesome female character. She is so cool and so strong, and she goes through a lot, and she comes out of it just so well developed and grown, and it's really wonderful to see her grow throughout the series. She grows so much even in this first book, from who she was at the beginning to who she is at the end. It's just a vastly different person, and it's really incredible to see her, and I love seeing female characters like having incredible character growth throughout. So that was cool. The world is incredibly complex and well built. Sarah J. Maas did a fabulous job making this a super developed world. It's one of the best, I think, developed worlds in YA, recent YA fiction. And that's kind of, I think, something that Sarah J. Maas is known for, where she does a lot of characters and a lot of world building in all of her books. But as I am a particular fan of this series, I think that the world building in this series is probably the best and is awesome. And I love fantasy, so I love seeing like Fae worlds being developed. I especially like Fae stories. I'm a big Holly Black fan as well, who also does a lot of Fae things, Fae stories that are incredible. But I really like seeing the different, aspects of the Fae world in this series and the different types of Fae. So that was cool. I think another thing that's really awesome about the series is, like I said, I think it sort of borders a little on new adult. But it's a good lead into more adult or more major fantasy works. So there's a lot more complex themes and relationships than a YA fantasy book that might be meant for like a 13 or 14-year-old. This one does a good job, I think, sort of introducing you to the world of adult fantasy and more mature fantasy with a lot more like politics and, world building and all these other things. I think it's a good starting point, because it's still a book meant for a YA audience, but it does approach these themes that are common in more mature and adult and fantasies meant for adult, which are predominantly just fantasies that follow characters that are, adult age. So yeah, I think this is a good series to start if you're maybe an older teen reader and you are sort of wanting to approach adult fantasy, but you're not just ready yet. This is a good book series to start with, I think. It is incredibly readable. These books, just for reference, this first book is the shortest book in the series, and it's 419 pages, so they're not short books. I think the third book is, I want to say it's almost 700 pages, and the second book is definitely in the 600 page range. Don't let that scare you, because that scared me at first. They are so fast to get through. I could not put any of them down. I think I read all of these books in a week when I read them for the first time. I read them when I was 17 for the first time, and I still remember everything that I read. I still remember where I was reading them. I still remember like how I felt in a lot of those scenes. Like, I was obsessed with these books when I read them for the first time. And they really are fast reads. They go so quickly. You're so invested in the characters. You're so invested in the plot line that even though it's like a 600-page book, the second book, you are going to be done with it in maybe 2 or 3 days. So don't let the size scare you, because it's so well done, and it's never like, it doesn't feel like it's too slow or it's too fast. It's very good length and pacing, which just means that the books are really compelling. It's the fact that like you can finish them so quickly despite their length. So yeah, so those are the books that I wanted to talk to you all about today. Tune in again for more book recommendations in the upcoming weeks and other videos. Have a good day. Bye-bye.